Moni, who is next?
Up next is Ace. Ace. They popped into the lobby, so I'm pulling them in here.
All right, cool stuff.
Hello, can you finally hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. What's up, bro?
Okay, because I'm thinking like something that would be pretty interesting to add in would like if World of Warcraft would add in like maybe avoid dragon aspect. I mean, obviously I'm adding like other stuff, but something to counter the dragon aspects we have. Like if the void came up with like a counter group, something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So the counter to our dragons is actually fairly interesting. One of their own. It is the Infinite Dragonflight. That they are the counter to all of our dragons, purely because our dragons are their arch enemies. They wish to destroy all other dragonflights till only one dragonflight exists, and that is the Infinite Dragonflight. Now, they don't actually explain how that is supposed to function. Like,
yeah,
do they
like
kill?
What kind of magic based? Because if Norzdomu or Morozon, whatever, is the leader of the Infinite Dragonflight, right?
Mhm.
Isn't it time-based magic? So that doesn't make
Corrupted,
sense.
yeah.
Well, it's corrupted time-based magic because Morozond and the Infinite Dragonflight goes around and destroys timelines. That's literally what they do. They erase entire timelines. So they do have power over the timelines, but only insofar as their destruction or their need for destruction of it is concerned. I've been thinking a lot about how infinite dragons are created, and specifically what they hope to achieve with all of these. Because if you guys remember the Chromie scenario, where they were literally the infinite dragonflight was literally destroying timelines. Holby, by the way, 27 months, part of the DJ Nation. Appreciate you, fam. Thank you. They were destroying all of these timelines, and the hope was that if they destroy all of Chromie's timelines, then Chromie said that she would surely die. But what if that's not true? What if by destroying all of the timelines, or all of the Chromies in all of the other timelines, eventually Chromie herself turns into an infinite dragonflight? Into an infinite dragon. So if you, by destroying enough of the timelines, you can actually turn a bronze dragon into an infinite dragon. That would make for something very interesting from a storytelling perspective. I don't exactly know, so I just quickly want to say your fresh favorites. So the Twilight Dragons, Altraxian from the Twilight Dragons. Wait, was Altraxian Twilight? Why do I think he was Chromatic? No, he wasn't Chromatic.
He was Twilight. The Twilight Dragons were, of course, the upgraded version of the Chromatics, because Deathwing's son made the Chromatics. Then Deathwing perfected them in the Twilights.
Yeah. I'm just looking through this. He was a Twilight Dragon. But remember, again, he was the result of interference and manipulation, right? He was created by something greater than himself insofar as Deathwing. It was a result of Deathwing's interference within what he would ultimately have been without that. So again, not necessarily an aspect. Technically an aspect because he was the greatest of all of the Twilight Dragons, but not an aspect on the same level as other dragon aspects. Because the dragon aspects have very specific gifts and curses that accompany their sort of, let's say, meticulous balance of power, whereas Altraxian didn't have that. Altraxian was just nuts. That's really...
Yeah, he was very unstable.
Yeah, which is sadly exactly what happens. This is why Deathwing could never actually get it right. It's kind of... Trying to infuse dragons with void power would almost always lead to them being completely crazy or just dying as a result of it. And Deathwing also tried to create the Chromatic Dragons, which was literally the culmination of all dragon powers into a single dragon. And this led to just stillborns. I think in the entire history of World of Warcraft, only 2 Chromatic Dragons ever actually existed. Chromagus and one other, I can't remember the name now, only ever actually survived. The Dragonflight just could never actually survive because no clutch was ever born. But again, this would be a result of outside forces, not of like a god providing it with a blessing and therefore giving it an actual clutch, giving it an actual flight. It is possible because dragons are highly susceptible, but in order to be an aspect, there's something very specific, and this comes from gods, right?
Kind of like
the Titans.
A enchantment.
Yeah. So the aspects are the leaders of their dragonflights. Altraxian wasn't even the leader of the Twilight Dragonflight. It was, in effect, Nalfarian or Deathwing. Altraxian served Deathwing. So this would, by design, make Deathwing the aspect of the Twilight Dragons, because the aspect is the leader. But since Deathwing is the leader of Altraxian, Altraxian can't then also be the aspect because he follows Deathwing. So he was just the greatest of the Twilight Dragons. Now, semantically, you could say, well, he's the aspect of the Twilight Dragonflight because he's the most powerful, and that would be perfectly fine. But if we're going to be very canonical about it, I don't think you could explain... If you do explain aspects that way, things could get muddied very quickly. You know. So I wouldn't be... I wouldn't know exactly... I wouldn't know what the bet is on that, if I'm honest.
Because I feel like we need
I don't know what
more
the bet is.
elemental dragons.
Yeah, the I think the best way to put it is that the aspects themselves are the dragons that were directly blessed by the Titans, and we just need to kind of put that as sort of our basically our test, our definition of what makes an aspect is they are basically not just the greatest of a flight, but they were blessed by an outside source. Just like with Altraxian and the Twilight Flight, he was created blessed by Deathwing. He was not powered by the old gods. It was something that Deathwing put together. That was basically in Deathwing's own madness and hubris, was mimicking what Deathwing was to the old gods. Like Altraxian's fate, where he dies at the Worm Rest Accord temple, is literally what happens in end times when Deathwing wins and the old gods are unleashed. Is his death on the spire of the Worm Rest Accord.
I just quickly wanted to rectify something because I realized that I'm speaking about something through a very specific lens and not necessarily being factually correct lore-wise. Sinestra was the sort of quote-unquote not even necessarily Sinestra, but more Syntheria. So Syntheria was the one who experimented on dragon eggs and ultimately, quote unquote, created the Twilight Dragonflight. But when I said that it is Deathwing, Altraxian was raised by Deathwing specifically. So Altraxian is the only Twilight Dragon that ever actually that was actually raised by Deathwing. So yeah, just wanted to sort of clarify that, just to be clear. But anyways, yeah. Apart from that, it depends. It's all semantics. That's the problem with dragons. This is one of the reasons I'm not always that fond of dragon lore. There's a lot of really cool stuff in the dragon lore, but there's also a lot of semantical stuff in the dragon lore, which I'm really hoping Dragonflight sort of sorts out. Because, yeah. I know. I know that sounds strange, but yeah, the dragons have never really caught me all that much. So I'm really hoping the Dragonflight changes that for me.
Yeah, I'm really hoping they add a lot more information about them because I'm used to like from different games and other like
Yeah.
media. Like dragons always have a lot of lore. They're always wise. They always have
Oh yeah.
very
There's-
much insight. They're powerful. They have psychic abilities. Like they have all these things that we don't ever really know about.
Yeah.
And in WoW, it's kind of just been very simple.
True. I think there's so much that Blizzard can dive into. And yes, just in chat, that is also true. So almost all of Deathwing's experiments never lived long. The Chromatic Dragons all died at birth. Actually, most of them died before birth even. The Twilight Dragons, some of them were born but died very shortly afterwards. Some of them weren't even born. Some of them could make it to like early childhood and then would die as well. And all of it was just due to the incredible unstable nature of their existence.
I believe there was considered 3 stable Twilight Dragons. There were the 2 twins that we dealt with in Grim Batol before we also had to... I think we finally faced them both in the Twilight Hammers raid where we took on Chokal. And then the 3rd stable Twilight, stable in huge freaking question marks, is Ultraxian himself.
Yeah. Well, not stable, but yeah, kind of stable, right?
He was alive.
Yeah, there may have been more, and we're probably going to find out that there's a lot more of all of these. Probably. No. You're thinking about Nether Drakes, fresh favorites? So, Nether Drakes, there are many. Twilight Drakes is the result of the infusion of dragon eggs. So, Nether dragon eggs being infused with an immense amount of nether power. So, you just amp up the nether aspects of those dragons, and ultimately they become Twilight Dragons. The problem is that they're unstable. There's no stability.
Yeah, it's really... it's really weird because both Twilight and Nether Dragons basically trace their lineage back to black dragon eggs, because the Nether Dragons were black dragon eggs that Deathwing hid on Outland as part of his deal to first give the dragon soul over to the Horde where they, trapped Alexstrasza, and then later he claimed those eggs back, the ones that were unhatched, and further experimented on them. So it's weird because Nether Dragons can be somewhat seen as a unnatural natural development. Like they developed organically because of where they were located, and then they were further tested and twisted when Deathwing came back.
I do have a question though, and I don't have an answer to this question, so don't ask me. It's just a question that I have. So I guess we'll really call this Akalon's question, but not his answer. Why? What was Deathwing trying to do?
Deathwing was
so many experiments.
Sorry.
No. I just wanted to qualify quickly. So many experiments on so many different types of dragonflights, from chromatic dragons to twilight dragons, to even nether drakes, to the Drakthir. What was Deathwing trying to establish? What was he trying to do? Because we know that he was driven crazy, right, by the old gods, and a lot of the experiments happened during his already descent into madness, right? But a lot of it happened before he even descended into madness, like the Drakthir, for example. That happened long before his descent into madness. Truffle Shuffle Gaming did 21 months. part of the DJ Nation. Appreciate you, fam. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Why? What was Deathwing after? Moni?
I would say let's exclude the Drakthir right now because we're just now being introduced to them. So if we look at the dragon experiments that he did from Chromatic to, let's even throw Nether into there because I'm pretty sure he wanted to find out what would happen if eggs were introduced to different areas.
Yeah,
as well as ultimately Twilight. He was trying to create a more loyal and enslaved black dragon flight. He thought his black dragons that were subservient to him were still kind of inferior, and was trying to basically make an army of Deathwings, like an army of these ascended, empowered, basically an entire army of dragon aspects. Because the problem is when Deathwing finally succumbed to his full corruption, his Dragonflight just became these mindless slaves of his, and they lost a lot of their autonomy, and he viewed that as just a failure.
Did he ever have like any visions, or he just had whispers?
He probably had visions and whispers. We don't actually know how the old gods communicate. We don't know what that sort of manifests as. But it was almost definitely like probably a mixture of the two. Because just whispers would probably not be enough to drive a man to madness, but the old gods show you futures, they show you things. We know at least that they do show people things. So it's almost guaranteed that they would have. They would have shown him visions as well. I like the theories that's coming out. Olgrim had a pretty nice theory there. Nightlight also had a pretty nice theory there about him wanting to create soldiers, like the ultimate soldiers. But I kind of wonder if there's not more to it. Like eventually it may have become just sort of like a mindless thing because that's what he's always done. But all of your explanations are only make sense if we exclude the Drakthir.
Yeah.
Because the Drakthir was created before he descended into madness.
Just don't know yet what the purpose of the Drakthir were. We don't even know if the Drakthir existed before any of the Dragonoid races, like the other human-esque dragons. So we don't know if the Drakthir were made because he needed these smaller agents of the aspects, or if he was just always constantly experimenting.
I don't know. It's one of those interesting things that I think about quite often. Is the why, because so often in World of Warcraft we'll see conclusions to things, but we won't often get an answer to the why. You know, it's like, yeah, he just created a bunch of things, never mind. And my personality is like, dude, fuck killing him. Just ask him. Like, I don't need to kill Deathwing. Just quickly ask him, why did you do this? If he answers, he can live. Like, I will grant him his life if he answers my questions. That's all I care about. Just answer the fucking questions, bro. Give me some answers here. Because, I'd love to get some answers to this kind of shit. Anyways.
I mean, it seems like that's pretty much it, though.
Is that your question, Ace?
Yeah. I mean, hopefully we get more on Deathwing, because I know they said they were gonna go more into depth for Dragonflight and just see why he was experimenting. You know, if it was for like an army to battle some other enemy, or if it's just for himself, like his own conquering nature. You know?
Yeah. No, I get what you mean. All right, well, thanks for the question, Ace. I really appreciate it. I'm hoping the same way you do. For more of this
No
shit,
problem.
definitely.
Yeah, I'm just glad I was able to make it. And you have
Thank
a
you.
good day.
You too, man. Take care of yourself, brother.